Hello. How are you? I hope all is well. I hope everyone is having a good time. Been playing some fun games, staying out of trouble, or at least getting into the trouble you meant to get into. Tonight's ramble is going to be sort of rambling. I'm going to talk about a few things. One, I should recommend that you go and check out my friend Brandes Stoddard's blog post about using Byzantium in your game. I love Byzantium. I think Byzantium is one of those wonderful, weird things in history where it's this huge culture that lasted for a long time and people seem to forget about it. I mean, when I took college English, or college history, Western civilization, they sort of, yeah, that happened. That was about it. I mean, honestly, there wasn't a lot of detail about it. And this is a college-level history class. Now, admittedly, it's the intro college level, but still, you'd think that they would spend a little more time talking about an empire that lasted hundreds of years. And had a tremendous impact on the relationship between, the countries of the Levant and Asia Minor and Europe. Enormous influence. And so it's interesting to me that it is sort of this, it's not quite a forgotten kingdom, but you could sort of, when you look at the history of it and how it's covered in our real history, like our history classes, the fantasy trope of the forgotten kingdom sort of makes a little more sense. So I'm going to recommend you go check it out. I'll include a link in the show notes. Beyond that, not much to report. I sort of burned out with work. And, I, pardon me, I have a cough apparently. And, I screwed up and on the recording, for the quartz, so I'm going to have to re-record it, and I feel dumb, but you know what, it's probably going to be better the second time around, so I'll do that, and I'll probably put it up Thursday, because I'm off Thursday, and therefore I have more time. And what else? Oh yes, I've started rereading Cadfael novels. If you've not read any of the Cadfael novels, I recommend it to you. There was a wonderful series as well, which I think all of it's on Netflix, that the British television did based on the series, starring Derek Jacobi, who is amazing, always, in just about everything he does. But, and I love the show, don't get me wrong, I do. I think it's an awesome show, you can totally get enjoyment out of watching it. But reading the books is actually a little bit better. It's not up to Umberto Eco's standard, but it certainly draws a lot from Name of the Rose. It is a very knowledgeable priest living in a small monastery in England, Shrewsbury, I think, and the monk who had a very long and storied life before he became a monk solves murders in and around that portion of England, and this is in the 13th century, 1200s, somewhere around there. So it's definitely a really interesting and compelling story. Series of stories, rather. And I love him as an archetype. In gaming, we get exposed to the militant priest a lot. The militant cleric has been sort of the default for how clerics and priests should be handled in fantasy role-playing games for a long time. because that's how it was in D&D. And D&D started as a war game. And having a guy who just healed, or just, prayed or something, didn't make a lot of sense. You wanted a guy who had a shield and a mace and also could cast spells and heal people. And I get that. And there is some basis for that particular brand of Catholic tradition. The militant priest who goes to war, that actually kind of happens. So, in history, they don't necessarily get to cast spells and heal people. Maybe a saint, I guess, if you happen to believe in that sort of thing. It's not really my cup of tea, but, I'm not going to insult anyone. But the notion of the priest, sage, scholar type doesn't get as much play in the fantasy RPGs, and for good reason. A lot of them are very action-heavy, and, a guy wandering around in a robe whose whole role is to just be smart doesn't get a lot of play in a game where people are trying to stab each other all the time. That said, there are some exceptions, and I rather like the archetype of Cadfael, the guy who is useful because he's smart, and very knowledgeable. And while it may not get much play in D&D, although I think there are ways to make that work in D&D, it does in some other games. I've often said that I love the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, and the Maester is very much in that role. So I think using Cadfael as inspiration is a great thing to do. It's also a great way to look at how to implement mystery stories in a medieval setting. Most of our archetypes for doing mystery stories boil down to, like, Sherlock Holmes, so Victorian, and Sam Spade, 1930s, 40s. There's not and of course modern day, because we all have seen CSI and various other things. There aren't a lot of inspirations for medieval fantasy mystery stuff. That could be used easily in most fantasy role-playing games. Now, there are some Chinese stories, I think. I'm going to have to do some research, because I'm just remembering this in the back of my head. There's a story about Chinese mystery solving characters, and I can't remember much beyond that. But and I'll have to do some research. Maybe if one of the people watching this know, let me know. But isn't there like a Chinese sort of equivalent, a historical figure or a legendary figure that would go around solving mysteries just, because he's smart? That said, in fiction, there aren't a lot of examples of how to run medieval fantasy mystery, or medieval mystery, as far as stories to use as archetypes. Cadfael's full of them. And it's a great way for you to sort of look for models for doing mystery stories. I like mystery stories myself. I'm a big fan of them. When they're implemented well. It's hard to do them right. It really is. But I love a good mystery story. And, you have to start with an archetype. Check out Cadfael for that archetype. Definitely pretty cool. It's also a good way of getting a picture of, the influence of monastic life on a town around it. It might give you some ideas for your games that way. Anyway, that's my ramble for tonight, and I hope everyone is well, and you stay out of trouble, and you're avoiding the ninjas. I know I am. And I will talk to you later. Subscribe, which should be, somewhere up there. Yeah, subscribe. Anyway, subscribe, and like and share with all your friends. And I will talk to you later.